So, in this video, I'm going to kind of cover sort of how to figure out whether something's either positive or negative, like a ratio, or to figure out whether the x or y coordinate is positive or negative, and also like what quadrant an angle might be in. So it's just working with a lot of stuff that's figuring out positive or negative. All right. So let's take a look at the first example. Suppose they tell me, I know that the cosecant of an angle is negative, so that's less than 0. And the secant of that same angle is positive. All right? So what quadrant is this angle in? So gamma. So the idea is, I know that cosecant of that angle gamma is, let me just make it really obvious here, negative. It's less than 0. But the definition of cosecant is what? And you really need to know these codes. So it's what? R over y is negative. And what we always know is we know that the r is always positive, right? The radius or the hypotenuse is always positive. It's the distance. So what that tells me is I have a positive number divided by y is a negative number. So I know the ratio of a positive number and another number is negative. That can only be true if what? Y is also negative, right? So now what I know is the y is negative. And the next piece of information is that secant of gamma is positive. But what's the definition of secant of any angle? Well, the secant is defined as r over what? X. And we know r is always what? Positive. So a positive number over another number is a positive number. What do I know has to happen? X must be what? X must also be positive then. So what I now know is x is positive, y is negative. So what quadrant am I in? Well, let's take a look. I move over positive in the x and then negative in the y. I'm somewhere in here, so I'm in quadrant 4. Okay. All right, let's take a look at another example there. Suppose I have here cosecant of beta is positive, it's greater than 0, and cosine of beta is negative, right? It's less than 0. What quadrant is beta in? So go ahead and pause the video and try that. So here cosecant of an angle is positive, and I know by definition this is r over y is positive. So here, since r is always positive, I have a positive number over it. This y must be also a positive number to come out with a positive number. So I know y is positive. And then here, using the other piece of information, cosine of that same angle is negative. But cosine is defined as x over r. So I know that r is always what? Positive. So the only way I could get a negative ratio is if x is also what? Negative. So now I know x is negative. So now if I have that x is negative and y is positive, x is negative, y is positive, I'm somewhere in here, I'm in quadrant 2. Okay. Okay, let's take a look at here. Suppose I know an angle alpha is in quadrant 4. Sine of alpha is what? Positive or negative? Cosine of alpha is what? Positive or negative? So I'm in quadrant 4. That's here. And in quadrant 4, x is positive, y is negative. That's from this information here. Then I got to go back to the definitions. Here's where I keep saying the definitions, you have to have those cold. It's really not, at this point, enough for you to look them up. They really should be part of your hard drive, so to speak. So sine of any angle is y over r. R is always positive, so I'm basically going to have whatever y value, which is in this case negative because I'm in quadrant 4, over a positive. So a negative divided by positive is negative. So in this case, is sine positive or negative? It is negative. Okay. And then cosine, so that's A. B, cosine of the angle is defined as x over r. But remember, r is always positive, and so what is x? Well, I know that here x is positive, right? So I have a positive divided by positive is positive. So what I know is cosine is always positive in quadrant 4. Okay. Let's look at another example. Suppose I know an angle is in quadrant 3. What is the ratio secant of that angle? Is it going to end up being positive or negative? So I'm in quadrant 3 here, where x is negative and y is also negative, right? All right, now I go to the definition of secant. Secant of an angle is, pause, but don't think too long, r over x. Remember, r is always positive, and then here in quadrant 3, x is negative. So a positive number divided by a negative number is negative. So your answer is negative. Okay. And last example, suppose you have the tangent of an angle theta is negative, right? So tangent is negative, and sine of that same angle is also negative. In what quadrant is that angle? All right, so tangent and sine, you got to know the definitions of both of them. So here we have y over x is negative, whereas here for sine we have what? Y over r is negative. Now, I really need to work with this first because here I don't know, if it's negative, I don't know if the y is negative and the x is positive, or if the y is positive and the x is negative. I don't know. But because I have this information from the sine of the angle, r is always positive. That can't change. So then I'm sort of in question, what is y? Well, if the whole ratio has to be negative, it must be that the y is negative. So therefore, from this ratio here, I know that y is negative. Now I can use this information in here and say, oh, okay, well, if y is negative, now I can fill that in. A negative number divided by another number ends up being negative, which means that x had to be what? Positive. Right? Because if they were both negative, I'd end up with a positive. So I know that x is positive. So now I know that x is positive, y is negative. What quadrant am I in? So I go positive and negative. I'm in quadrant 4. Okay? Thanks so much for listening.